Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Matthew again from Atlantic Computer Services, and I'm here today again with Kevin Flowers from Wade Associates. How you doing today, Kevin?
Doing great. Happy to be back.
Good deal. So we are talking today about the importance of employee training when it comes to cybersecurity. So one of the things that's really interesting about kind of the evolution of cybersecurity and cyber attacks and things like that is the protections around software have gotten really advanced, right? So one of the ways that the hackers and attackers continue to advance their game is they're saying, well, I'm not going to worry about going in the software angle. I'll go in the human way. I'll actually get in touch with someone directly, which would be a business owner, um, most often an employee or someone. So you've got to train your people to kind of know what to look for, what these attacks look like, what some of the different things are, and then how to be prepared to thwart them, how to be prepared to defend against them.
Yeah.
I wanted to share a quick story to give you an example of how easily this kind of thing could happen, and then we'll talk about some training opportunities that are out there. We'll talk about some easy red flags to look for. And, I want to hear too, like what the benefit is to people if they invest in this kind of thing from an insurance perspective, how they might be able to, save money or get credits on their policy or things like that. So we had a client, of course, I'm not going to share any information, but we had a client who reached out to us because they were upset that our antivirus didn't catch a hack attack, and we were scratching our head as to what had happened. And as we got more information, we realized that the hack or the attack that they had suffered wasn't actually, again, like I said, it didn't have anything to do with coming in software wise. So they were actually the victim of a phishing attack or spear phishing attack. And what that means is phishing attacks are when hackers will directly reach out to people, usually via email, possibly by text message, these days through social media. A lot of times, though, it happens through a company email because they want to get into the company directly that way. And what had happened was there was an administrative assistant who got an email from the CEO. Now, this was actually just a person posing as the CEO, but here's kind of how the attack rolled out. They asked the administrative assistant, they said, hey, I'm in a hurry, but I'm headed into a client meeting, but I need you to go out and get me 5 eBay gift cards for $100 each, right? So the admin assistant says, all right, I'm headed to my lunch. I'll get them as soon as I get back. Email right back goes, no, I need this to happen right now. I need you to drop what you're doing, and I need you to head out there. So they're pressing the urgency, and they want you get you involved with it before you can even start to think what's happening or before you can check in the validity of anything. And here's where it really got slick, because they jumped out of email and gave them a phone number and said, just text me on the way. Here's my personal cell phone number. And they kept the conversation going like that. So we got to see the screenshots of the entire conversation. It's the admin assistant writing back to the CEO and saying, tell me what the denominations have to be. Tell me what, what exact, do you want 5 cards? Do you want 1 card? The whole conversation is going back and forth, just like it would if you were asking somebody directions on what they actually wanted. And ultimately, it came down to the attacker said, great, you got the cards. Now send me the screenshots of the backs of the cards, scratch off the PIN number so that I can get all this information over to them right away. We saw the images, we saw everything all happening in what looked like in real time. And it was really, really amazing. So long story short, they were out the $500 for the gift cards, and there's nothing you can do to recoup that investment. That kind of thing is out. And in this case, that was just a small, $500 is not a ton of money. Nobody likes to lose $500, that's for sure. But in this case, that was kind of a small hit. And what these attackers do is they could go through 10, 12 of those a day. Yeah. And, you do the math and they just kind of stack that thing up. And in a minute, we'll talk about some of the things that we identified with them as far as, how we might have gone about spotting this up front. But that's how quickly and easily it can happen. Somebody gets in touch with you, they pose as someone that you trust, and then they really speed the process along to try to get you involved in the attack. And it's unfortunately it's a hard lesson to learn that way. But if you get involved with cybersecurity training for your employees, they know that there are some things out there that they can look for, and some things that they can be protected against. There's the financial aspect that comes along with that kind of thing, but being prepared for those kinds of things actually has a benefit even before the attack happens from the insurance perspective. And you were sharing something with that, or sharing something about that with me before we got started here.
Yeah, the main thing when it comes to employee training for cybersecurity, what we're looking for is a formalized plan. So if it's not written down, it's generally not implemented. And those things can apply underwriting credits, like our previous video talking about a formalized cyber incident response plan, post breach or post incident. Those are things that you want to see. Again, if it's not written down, 90% of the time it's not actually implemented. So the most important thing when developing a training program is to make sure that the employees are comfortable when they're uncomfortable with something that's happened. So you never want them to fear that in the situation that you described, that an employee would oftentimes be fearful once they identify that this was not normal, but they were acting in the CEO or owner of the company asking to do this. You want to make sure that to not identify the situation and go through the proper channels like ACS or whoever your managed service provider is, to be able to jump into that quickly, you can nip that in the bud, which is what happened as soon as y'all got involved. And then just things like device management, password management, like we've talked about, making sure that those are visited at least annually, if not more often, because just like what we're doing with these videos, the more it's in front of people, the more you remember, and it triggers the, wait a second, something seems off about this. He or she's never asked me to purchase 500 gift cards or $500 in gift cards. Something seems a little off. And, and being able to go into a formalized training program and be able to identify certain particular things in emails like font usage, email addresses, the scroll over the actual email address to make sure it's not, a faked email address to make it look like the CEO. All those things just need to be reinforced throughout the period of the training.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that there's a temptation to assume that everybody knows what they're supposed to be looking for. And quite honestly, you just can't, because not only does the information change, but if you've never been exposed to this kind of thing and you never had to deal with this kind of thing, you don't know what you're looking for. And it's like you said, the more that this kind of thing is in front of you, or the more that you're looking at this, it becomes easier to identify when you are in that scenario. You bring up an interesting point about having a formalized plan, about doing things, and actually having it written down and a process for it, because one of the most important parts about all this is doing it regularly. So we use a product called ID Agent, and their recommendation is quarterly, because it's the kind of thing that if this doesn't, not only do the attacks evolve and get more sophisticated, and you need to know what's new out there, is you just want to keep this kind of thing on people's minds, at top of mind. Because I'm not ashamed to admit I fell for a training phishing attempt at a company that I worked at previously, where what we do is in the part of the employee training is send out fake emails. And I got one to my work email that talked about an issue with an Amazon order. So everybody makes Amazon orders. The thing that I should have realized is that my Amazon account is not linked to my work email. So that should have been my red flag right away. But sure enough, I wanted to know what the problem was with my shipping. I clicked on that link, and it just played the whole "we got you" thing, and I was back into the training again. And part of that's because we did the training once and then kind of set it on the shelf. If it was the kind of thing that I did on a more regular basis, I might have been able to spot that a little more quickly.
Yeah.
So some of the things that people want to include in their employee training? Are there things that, we should be recommending that they're looking out for? Are there things that we should be covering? And what types of things need to go into this employee training plan?
Yeah, I mean, just basic device management, which is just simple things. Is always securing your devices. Never leave them in a work bag or that's in your car or not in your home or office. Like we've talked about in previous videos, low hanging fruit. If you see a laptop or you see a work bag in a vehicle, it's a lot easier to get out than if it's inside of your house or inside of your office. You know, and this is for outside of the office stuff, a lot of these safeguards, but never logging into a public or unsecured network. Obviously that's a big no, but still happens. Make sure your devices are utilizing software driver and patch updates. And I think the most important one, like you had mentioned, for social media and keeping your laptop or your device usage separate for business and personal use, because these phishing attacks can come through Facebook, you know, Instagram, anything that has access to it. And relative or relevant to now, LinkedIn just released that back in 2019, the more underscore eggs Trojan was going through their system, and it's been reintroduced now as a job seeking bot that is reaching out to people, trying to gather information to give them info about a potential job opportunity. They get the email address, the email sent to the person. They click on it to get the packet for application, when in fact it's a zip file with the backdoor Trojan that then goes into the entire network and into their device. So, you know, keeping those things separate. You would obviously not want your employees on LinkedIn answering a job opportunity solicitation, but understand that if that were to come across, employees are obviously clicking on it because it's become a thing. So, keeping those two things separate are another big thing. And that's more direct just for phishing for employee training. The employee training, like I'm sure the program that y'all offer, is incredibly broad. There's topics that you can select. And oftentimes, if you go through a third party, you can build it yourself. So to be able to talk about what should be in there, there's so much. And that's why doing it quarterly, you can take a topic and have a full presentation on it. But relevant to this topic of phishing, I think that a big thing is understanding what phishing is, and those management tactics in order to remediate that.
Yeah, and it comes back to the idea that there's this conception that cybercrime and hacking and things like that are all digital, that it's all a matter of software, that it's all a matter of happening online. And it is, and it does, and that's a big part of it. But how they get into the system, the biggest, I guess, the biggest door for them is the human element.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's much harder to hack into a system and do it all covert and do it all digitally and behind the scenes, it's so much easier to just try to trick somebody. It's the old-fashioned con game. I mean, it's the old-fashioned con game in new clothes, basically. And again, it's just why it comes back to being so important that people are aware of the basics of how it works, but also, like you were just mentioning, the evolution and the new attacks that are out there. So even there are so many attacks that come that are that play on our decency and play on our goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
Like the job seeking is the kind of thing that somebody's out there looking for a job. They're not. A lot of times the hacks and attacks come through what we call the sin sites, right? Gambling and other things that people tend to be attracted to for nefarious reasons. In some cases, I'm not, whatever your preference is, you do you. But those tend to be sites that people don't share very often. They tend to use, they do very quietly, so they don't share that they're on those types of things. But when you're talking about, somebody looking for a job, or, fundraising is another popular way that people, lots of pictures that just pull on your heartstrings and tug on your heartstrings, and you want to do the right thing by somebody, and you click a donate link, and it may wind up opening the Trojan, like you said. So there's just all kinds of things that you need to be aware of, that start at a base level of common red flags, but also knowing what some of these more advanced attacks are starting to look like. So as we're thinking about this now, one of the things that I did want to talk about specifically was with the phishing emails, and just kind of leave people with some tips on, again, some of the basics about what to look for in an email. You touched on a couple of them in the beginning, but let's say I get an email and it comes from my CEO. What are some of the things that would lead me to believe that that this isn't actually from my CEO? Some things that I need to have just in the back of my mind anytime I open an email from the CEO or anybody. Mm-hmm. So what would be a couple of those things that you might point out right off the bat?
Yeah, and I've got a limited perspective on this versus someone in your industry, but for me, the things I'm looking for is their email signature, which we all have a formatted email signature, the domain server where their email was sent from. So when you look, you can see, for Wade Associates, J Wade is jwade@wadeassociates.com. If it were to be coming from J Wade at wadeinsuranceisawesome.com, I'd be like, wait a second, that's not correct. Or if it's coming from jwade@gmail.com, I would probably be a little concerned about that too, because he traditionally doesn't email me from his personal email. Again, another thing, if you have a bot sending these emails, a lot of times font is going to be off, spacing is going to be off, capitalization is going to be off. Just those three things are the first things that pop out. And again, like we had talked about earlier, if you feel uncomfortable about something, it's better to, start doing a little diligence than to not, and to move forward with purchasing the gift cards like you had described earlier.
So I think that last point you hit on is probably the first thing that I tell people is, if something doesn't feel right, then there's a good chance that it's not. Mm-hmm. So, and your subconscious can pick up on that a lot of times. So you mentioned the email itself. So some people don't know this, that you can actually type a from name, like you could type Matthew Coleman and change the email that it's from. So I could very easily open an email account and then set it for from Matthew Coleman, or I could go back in there and say it's from Kevin Flowers. The name that shows up in your email box doesn't necessarily have to match the email string. Right. So in the phishing, in the gift card example, the email came through as the CEO's name and then a Gmail address that was very clearly a foreign name. Mm-hmm. So it was not, not only was it not the CEO's name, but it wasn't even close. It was something that could have been easily recognizable. You mentioned the font and things like that. Another big one is just grammar in general. A lot of times these attacks come from overseas, so the language is actually run through a translator, mm-hmm. and translators are not 100% accurate. So if words are misplaced, and again, just reading it and it doesn't quite make sense. Another one is to check and see what time the email is sent. So if you come in to the office in the morning and you've got an email from somebody that was sent at like 3:00 in the morning, and you know that nobody in your office works those hours, and it's an unusual request at an unusual time, there's a good chance that that's not it. Right. And I was thinking one last thing too. Oh, as far as getting links and things that are in your what you want to do is, again, a lot of people don't know this, you can hover over a link. So put your cursor over a link without clicking on it. So if it says, like in the one that I fell for a while back, if it says Amazon.com or whatever the full address is, but you go back and hover over it and it's some long string of characters that doesn't do anything, or it's the old school exe files or anything like that, or the zip file, that's another flag. That's something else that you want to be paying attention to. And then just double check. Yeah, and then like I said, just the overall content of the email. If it's something that you've never been asked to do before, or if it's something that just seems a little unusual, then there's a good chance that it probably is.
Yeah.
All right, so I appreciate you guys checking out the video today. Kevin, thank you as always. Again, great stuff. I really enjoy having these conversations. We're going to post contact information for myself and Atlantic Computer Services and Kevin and Wade Associates under this video. So if you've got any questions about cybersecurity or cyber insurance, we'd be happy to help you out with that. I'll also post a link to where you can get some more information about cybersecurity training for employees. And then if you have any other questions about this video or any of the other videos, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you with that, again, about employee training or cybersecurity in general.
Thanks for having me on again, Matthew.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. We'll see you next time.
All right, video 3 in the books.